quick, just to show you Blackboard here, just to make sure we're all on the right track. So under the modules, the newest ones, Module 7, Enlightenment and Romanticism. Madame Bovary is going to go up very soon because that's our reading for next week. I just haven't enabled it yet. But the grammar workshop on cutting clutter is right here. So if you click that video, if you click this folder inside, I have a video here where I talk about cutting clutter, and I also talk about in-text citations for MLE. And so you can watch that video. In the video, I discussed this handout. And then once you watch the video, you can go in and take the quiz. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward as far as that goes. If you haven't done that yet, you can still do so. Okay.
So that Madame whatever that was. Yeah. Is that the one at the beginning of the year you told us we could buy the book off Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, I got the book. I hadn't opened my package, but I was just making sure that was that book.
Yeah, we start that book next week. You know, you guys are gonna love that book. It's a good book.
I can't find it on. They didn't have it over in Charleston at the bookstore. Can I do it on like Audible or something, or do I need a copy of the book?
I don't know why not. You can listen to it on Audible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I found it on Amazon for like $12.
Okay, I might do that too.
Yeah, you could if you have something like a Kindle or something like that, you can read it for free on that because it's in the public domain.
Like Zeppelins and Harleys or Kindles, I think.
See, did I have a? I don't know if I have a full text copy of it up. Yeah, but you can get it. You can get it for free on something like Kindle, or if you have an iPhone, you can read it on iBooks. Lots of places you can get it.
Okay, so it's on iBooks for free too.
Yeah, Madame Bovary should be. Yeah.
Okay, that's next week's. We got to turn in that one thing next Friday, ain't it, on the 12th?
The poem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When is that third short paper going to be due? Is that going to be due around week 15 or December sometime? Or?
That'll be due. The third prompt I'll probably have due about the 26th, something like that.
Is the paper due the 12th too? Or have I missed that? Is the paper due with the sonnet on the 12th?
Sonnet, that was the word. Avery.
Yeah, the sonnet is due on the 12th. That's right.
What about the paper?
The second one is due
tomorrow.
Oh, great.
So
I thought it was the 12th.
I guess that means you're going to do the third paper then, huh?
Yeah, see,
I could try to whip out one tonight and see what it looks like. It might not be great, but I'll try.
I was going
well, I mean,
three of them.
Yeah, you get your choice, 2 or 3. So
well, if we do all 3, then maybe we'll get an extra.
Where's the 2 packs of cards that I got out?
If you do all 3, I'll give you the best 2 as far as the grades go.
Yeah.
So that's what I was
going to try to do it on Hamlet because I don't know about these readings that we've done, and I can't even imagine a paper about. I mean, I'll try everything.
Right. I remember
I know more about Hamlet.
I do too.
Than any of them.
Yeah, the module or that short paper too. There's questions about Hamlet and Chaucer and all that,
Okay,
all that
I was-
Dante, all that stuff was on that short paper two prompt.
okay. I was gonna ask if there was questions.
And the third paper prompt will mostly be questions on Paradise Lost or Madame Bovary. And so you'll pretty much have your choices amongst that for the third short paper.
Madam Bovary's a high-class hooker. I'm gonna like this one.
We just took our exiting exams for Lindsay Wilson on our bachelor's, so
How did it go?
that's out of the way, but we get an extra chance. They'll grade it and send it back to us what we did miss. We'll have a chance to redo it, so.
Yeah, like we're
Thank goodness.
slightly stressed, just a little bit. Just a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. If I was you guys, I would just wait to do the third paper. That's what I would do in your situation.
Yeah.
Breathe,
Probably will.
breathe.
I
I would rather have people split them up anyway. That way my paper grading isn't so extreme. People break them up. Some people do 2 and some people do 3. That would be better for me. So
Yeah, my plan was to do all 3, but it probably ain't gonna happen now.
so now, like I said, next week there will be an early week reading on the Romantic poets. So you guys will read some stuff from Blake and Wordsworth. And I'll give you a little bit of Emily Dickinson too, to give you some American lit. You'll have a little bit of that for early in the week next week. And late in the week next week, you'll read part 1 of Madame Bovary. It's divided into parts. So there's 3 parts. So you'll do part 1 next week. That'll kind of dip your toes into the story and all that. So as you guys will find out, Madame Bovary is a very risque book. It's about adultery. All right, so we're gonna be talking some adultery themes over the next couple of weeks. So it's a famous adultery novel. So
Is this it? Well, I don't think you can see it. Yeah, is that it?
let me share my screen here. So we'll put it up there again.
Okay.
Yes, or it should be within that. Yeah, the complete works
Okay.
of Flabeau. So yeah, like I said too, your discussion grades and all that, I'm going to be catching up on those probably this weekend. I've had the paper queue from hell to get through, and I'm almost through it. So after I clear the queue, I'll catch up on all the other stuff. Okay. Now, most of the other lit faculty this semester, like people who's teaching American Lit and Brit Lit, most of those people have like 5 students. I've got like 50 in this class. So yeah, they stuck everybody in this class because it's an online class. So, but I'm glad to have everyone though. So yeah, without further ado, then we shall get started with today.
Hold on. I was gonna ask a question. What happened to Jenna? She coming on Fridays or something?
Yeah, she did last Friday. Yeah.
Cause she did partner discussion too. I know she hadn't been here for almost a month, I think.
Yeah, she came last Friday. So a couple of people defected over to Fridays.
Yeah, I normally come on Fridays, but I got a busy day tomorrow, so I worked it in today.
We got a good group on both days, I think. Yeah. Usually it's you over there, Kashina, Nathan.
Stacy, I think she always
Stacy.
Friday.
Stacy.
Yeah.
The one Friday class I went to, there was only like 4 of us in there though.
Yeah, it's not as big of a group. But today, like I said, as you see, I'm live from France. So, so since we're going to be talking about the French a lot over the next couple of weeks, and our playwright for today is Moliere. Moliere is our playwright for today. This famous play, Tartuffe. So before we dive neck deep into that, I do want to go give a little bit of lecture today on some literary movements that started taking place around this time. I'm kind of cramming 2 gigantic literary movements into 1 week, just because such is the nature of the beast in a class that goes from the Greeks to the present. Right. But Moliere was probably the beginning of these, what we would call Enlightenment writers, the Enlightenment writers. The Enlightenment was a literary movement that sprang about as a large result because of philosophy. You had guys like John Locke or John Rousseau, right? You had these philosophers who were writing about new things. Like, for example, John Locke came up with the idea of tabula rasa, right? Tabula rasa, meaning we're all a blank slate. So when we're born, we're all a blank slate. Locke argued it's our nurturing that makes us who we are, not our inner nature, but our nurture. But a lot of these Enlightenment writers started writing about lots of different subjects. Some of which helped inspire American independence. You guys all know that writers like Thomas Jefferson, like the Declaration of Independence, he quotes from John Locke in that document. So, but the Enlightenment, I should say, was an age of secularism. This was an age of secularism. So stuff, especially with religion, like the Enlightenment period was very critical of religion, in large part because of all the death and destruction that happened because of religion in the 17th century. So a lot of the death and destruction from the 17th century. So as I told you guys last week about Milton and Cromwell, all that, right? But the Puritans helped cause a lot of death and destruction. Like, these people were fighting wars over religion. There's always been conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants, but like I said, Protestants even started fighting with each other. Even in the American colonies, that in the American colonies, we had stuff like the Salem witch trials that came about. Lots of religious hysteria. So a lot of people were feeling pretty skeptical about religion at the end of the 17th century, going into the 18th century, for probably good reason. Because, like I said, a lot of this stuff, bad stuff, happened. Wars and witch trials and things like that. So because the Enlightenment The Enlightenment sought to explain things not from a religious point of view. You know, it was during this time period that a lot of the great scientists in history were coming out with their best stuff, right? You had people like Sir Isaac Newton, you know, coming up with his laws of physics around this time. Before that, you had thinkers like Copernicus, right? Milton actually references Copernicus a lot in Paradise Lost in like book 8. But you had thinkers like Copernicus. Copernicus, during the 17th century, you know, he came up with the idea that the earth revolves around the sun. Right? Before that, the conception in the Western world was the sun revolved around the earth. They thought that because of what was in the Bible, right? You know, if mankind is the center of God's creation, then it would follow that the sun revolved around the earth. Well, when Copernicus came up with the idea that the earth revolves around the sun, the Catholic Church didn't like it, right? Copernicus had to wait till after he was dead to even publish his findings, because he knew that if he came up with it during his lifetime, he knew the church would probably had him murdered, or he would have been in jail, imprisoned. The Catholic Church in the Middle Ages didn't mess around. Middle Ages, late Renaissance period didn't mess around. Right? If you were deemed a heretic, right, that was it. You know, you had the Inquisitions happening, where the church would always try to cleanse itself from within, the corruptions that were happening within. So like even the church, lots of the Inquisitions weren't good, right? Lots of unjust things happened because of it. So not to rain on religion's parade today, right? But that's pretty much what the Enlightenment period was all about. It was a wide distrust of religion. Timmy, if you don't mind, turn your camera off now, because I'm going to have a seizure if I keep if I keep watching.
I'm sorry, I'm going at it with my kids.
You good? You good, my friend? You good?
Why not?
But there you go. So yeah, like I said, an age of skepticism. Well, the next week for your early week readings, you'll read stuff from the Romantic period. The Romantic poets rejected the Enlightenment. Right? They thought that a lot of this stuff in the Enlightenment was wrong, and it took away the life from literature, so to speak. So the Romantic poets especially were all about stuff like nature. Right? They appreciated the finer parts of nature. They sought to bring sort of a spiritual way of thinking about things back into the mainstream. However, the Romantic poets weren't just about Christianity. With the Romantic poets, they were reading things from the non-Western world for the first time. So you had the Romantic poets were reading stuff from Hinduism, Buddhism, even stuff like Confucianism and Taoism, all these religions from the Eastern world. They were starting to read those things, and their views on stuff like nature and things like that started to change. So only in the 18th century, going into the 19th century, did we really start to see the Eastern world even influence the Western world. Before that, they were pretty separated. But when the British started colonizing India and all these places in the Eastern world, that's when some of the influence of the Eastern world started to spread over. So yeah, like I said, reading stuff like Hinduism, religious texts and stuff like that influenced a lot of these romantic writers we're going to read. So two movements back to back within literature. And next week, when we read Madame Bovary, we're going to talk about another movement called realism. So I'm throwing lots of terms at you here. But as we talk about Moliere, most of what we're going to talk about is with the Enlightenment. I originally was going to have you guys read Voltaire this week as well, but I chose not to because I didn't want to kill you with reading. Right? Voltaire is also a very famous French Enlightenment writer as well, known for his satires. So there you go. There's a little bit about Enlightenment and Romanticism. Moliere was writing about the same time as Milton was in England. Moliere was writing, he lived 1622 to 1673 in France. So he was, pretty much the same life frame as Milton for the most part. Milton was over in England, of course, but roughly the same period. There was some religion, in France, there was a lot of political stuff going on over there too. I don't know as much about French history as I probably should, but I know at this time period, it was King Louis the 14th, right? King Louis the 14th laid out the claim, right? He said, I'm the king. Why am I the king? Because God gave me the divine right to rule. Right? So I rule with the King Louis the 14th pretty much said, I rule with the power of God. Right? That's who sanctions me being king is God. Right? That was a pretty radical idea, right, for the time period. What better way to solidify your political power, right, than to say God made me king. Right? That's the way God wanted it to be. Right? So what better way to entrench your power? Of course, you guys probably know his dynasty didn't live too long after him because it was King Louis the 16th who was murdered during the French Revolution, which took place in the 1780s. So, they could go in a whole tangent about that. We'll probably talk more about the French Revolution when we get to Madame Bovary. Madame Bovary was written about the same. Madame Bovary is written the decade the French Revolution happened. It would happen later in the decade, but the book kind of predicts some things that would happen. But yeah, I'm going to be interested to hear what you guys have to say about that, because this play ends with the king directly getting involved. Right. So in a way, this book kind of feels like it's kissing the king's butt at the end, right? That's kind of the impression that I took from it. But Moliere is one of the most famous French playwrights. Like he's kind of like just how the English revere Shakespeare, the French revere Moliere for many of the same reasons. Moliere wrote on all the genres, not just comedies, but he also wrote tragedies as well. It was during this time period that they were finally allowing women on the stage, right? It took this long, but in the mid 1600s, they were finally starting to allow women to play women parts on the stage. Sometimes not, like I was reading that with Tartuffe, part of the laughs was because some of the parts were played by men still. So like when Tartuffe was trying to seduce the wife in the play, right? Some of the laughs was because it was a male actor playing the female part, right? So that was part of the laughs that they took from it. But it was during this time. I don't know about in France, but I do know in England. In England during this time period, they were finally starting to allow women back on the stage. Well, I went not even back on the stage for the first time. You know, in England, once the throne was restored following the Civil War, things started to get a little less strict, right? Because everybody was sick of the Puritans' garbage, right? Because it was the Puritans who ruled England during the Cromwell reign. Right? People didn't like that, so things started to loosen up a lot in England. The French have always been a little looser than the English, right? The English have always been kind of stuffy, right? Compared to the French, who are much more much more in line with open expression about stuff, right? Especially with sex and stuff like that, right? The French are a much less stuffy people when it comes to these types of subjects. So yeah, you see stuff in this play that you probably wouldn't see in an English play at this time period, right? Just because the French have different mores than the English do for the most part. Not always, but for the most part, France has always been a little bit of a looser place to live than England, which is kind of weird because French is a Catholic country and not a Protestant country. You would think it would be just as strict, if not more so. But the French have always been a little less reserved than the English. Famously, when Ben Franklin went over to France in the 1770s, right, trying to persuade them to join our cause over in America, right? Ben Franklin was a famous Ben Franklin was a famous politician, right? He would go over there, like and like men would throw their wives at him. Like men would be like, sleep with my wife, Ben Franklin. He'd be like, got you covered. Right. So Ben Franklin was quite a ladies' man, right? He partially got the French to intervene in America with the power of his with his male power, so to speak, right? So yeah, if you can thank Ben Franklin's penis, right, for helping us get American independence. So he was a rock star at the time period. I mean, he was that well famous. He was almost like a rock star. He would go over there and wear like coonskin caps and act backwoods for laughs and stuff like that, right? Just to kind of, he was one of the most brilliant men in the world. He would go there and act stupid, right? Just for laughs. He knew how to play the French game. So he knew how to play their game to get them on their side against England. Then when John Adams, not to give you guys a history lesson here, but not when John Adams went over there to take his place as ambassador, John Adams was a complete disaster because John Adams was a stuffy old New England Christian guy, right, with his morals. And that didn't really go over too well with the French elite. Right? They didn't want somebody stuffy. Right? They wanted somebody who would have fun. So yeah, he was famously recalled. Then he went to England to be the first American ambassador to England, and he did well in that role because he's more priggish. John Adams was more priggish in that way. But to dive out of the history a little bit, then looking at the play itself, the play is written almost like it's poetry. I don't know if you guys noticed, but every 2 lines rhyme for the most part. It's always, this whole thing is rhymed in couplets. Yes, I see you notice nodding your head there, Sherry. Did you pick up on that pretty quick that it was rhymed?
Yeah, I thought it made it a lot easier to read too, because it rhymed like that. It just made more sense and it flowed better.
It definitely has the function of helping the actors remember the lines. That's part of why it does that. The actors can remember the lines a lot easier than they can in something like Shakespeare, because Shakespeare never rhymes. Sometimes he'll have a rhyming couplet at the end of an act in some of his plays, but for the most part, he stays away from rhyme. Every other line, every 2 lines rhyme for the most part in this thing. We talked about how in English poetry, when we talked about sonnets, how in English poetry, it's written in iambic pentameter, right? Meaning that there's 10 syllables in a line. Most of the lines kind of take a da-thum beat. And if you count the syllables in every line in this play, for the French, every line has 12 syllables, right? Every line, and you can count every single line in this thing, and every line will have 12 syllables. So that's more of a French poetic convention, like to have 12 lines or 12 syllables in a line. As far as the meter goes, I don't know about that for French because I don't know French, so I can't really speak to the meter. But I do know that in the translation, even like part of the translation that we have in our book, they wanted to preserve the rhymes and the 12 syllables. But as far as the meter and the beat goes, I don't know what the traditional meter for French is. So, yeah, so I'll stop talking now. I've talked enough. What did you guys think of this play? Like, what's your general thoughts, your general impressions of Tartuffe? Anybody?
I really liked it. I thought he was just he was a scam artist. He had, however you say the guy's name, Iran or however, he had him totally bumfuzzled. He was willing to give up his family, his wife, everybody, because this man could do no wrong. Listen, I don't know about y'all, but when I was reading this, I was seeing Jimmy Swaggart. No joke.
Yeah, my aunt in Texas is a big fan of his. Right? I'm just like, Colt.
Yeah, he was going to give up his daughter, marry off his daughter and everything. Like he was determined to satisfy him.
He was something else is what he was. I was like, and you don't really like, you're like, man, this guy really likes him. And then you get down through there about halfway and you're like, what? When he's coming on to his wife, and like you're really thinking that he's a holy man, and then he starts telling her something about her rosy cheeks and all this stuff. I'm like, what? But
who sees him? A maiden or something sees him? Is that how it goes?
The maid was against it, like saw through him. Like nobody liked him but the dad.
I feel like, didn't somebody see him though coming on to the wife, Emmer, or
Yeah, the husband was hiding under the table, right? So
okay, and then yes, I was gonna say somebody was in a closet or Something like that, yeah, okay.
And then his son was hid when he was talking to her and he was coming on to her. And she was going to use that to keep him from marrying the daughter. And the son was like, aha, I got you now. And dad just exiled him.
Yeah, run him
Yeah.
off.
How dare you accuse him of that? He would never. Yeah, we learned the mom doesn't tell on Tartuffe, right? Because she's trying to like blackmail him, right? She's trying to be like, hey, I'm going to tell on you if you, as long as you don't marry the stepdaughter, right? So she's trying to play her own game before the son gets involved.
Yeah, I thought he was a master manipulator. And I kind of like this, for me, I like how it kind of exposed hypocrites, like, or Christians of that time, from like, that's what I liked about it too. But yeah, he was definitely a master manipulator.
Yeah, a lot of the French Catholics at this time did not like this play. They wanted this play banned. They wanted the books burned. Right? They did not like this play at all, right? Because they took this character of Tartuffe very personally, right? They did not like being satirized by Moliere here. You would think that they would be like, yeah, we don't want people like this, right, claiming to be Christians. But a lot of the, like I said, a lot of the people who were very powerful in the church, they did not like this thing. They thought it was indecent and wrong. And it
Make
needed-
him look bad.
Yeah.
I'd like to find somebody as dumb as that. Here's my house, here's my everything. Like, here you go. You're wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll give you my daughter.
Yeah.
What can I do for you?
I'll give
And
away
I
my.
still want to know what was in the box. Because it
Yeah,
never does tell you what was in the box.
it was like some kind of state secret or something, right? So he even gave that to Tartuffe. He did that because if somebody came by wanting it, right, he didn't want to have to tell a lie saying no, I don't have it. So even though he knows where it is, he didn't want to tell a lie saying I don't have it. Like a technicality is kind of why he gave it to Tartuffe.
Yeah, he's got that, was Madame Purnell, he's got her pretty convinced that, whenever it starts. She just thinks that basically, I guess everybody's just picking on him.
Yeah, she's the overbearing mother of the father here. She's the overbearing grandma, right? He's like, this guy can do no wrong. Right?
And even once the son had figured out what he was, she was like, no, you didn't see it correctly. I'm sure you're overreacting. He would never. And he was getting mad. And Doreen, or however you say her name, she was like, now you know how we felt. We've been telling you this and you didn't believe it.
Yeah, only when they serve her the eviction notice does she come to her senses. It takes getting kicked out for her to come around.
Yeah, usually when somebody's that big of a manipulator and instigator and just lies, they eventually can't keep up with all their lies and all their wrongdoings of everybody, and they eventually end up basically putting backing themselves into a corner, and they can't fight their way out.
Right, which is what happens to him here at the end, right? The king catches Tartuffe up in his lies, right? So has him arrested at the end. Everything's back to normal. Everything's hunky dory, sort of at the end. Tartuffe's arrested and put in his place.
I was not expecting that ending. Like it
Mm.
shocked me. Like I was not expecting that. I was expecting them to like behead this guy and all kinds of stuff. Not, you're forgiven. The king figured out everything. Like I wasn't expecting all that. It was a cute surprise though.
Yeah, like the play kind of is rolling on. Like it sort of feels like it's going to take a serious tragic turn or something, right? But then boom, like it takes kind of a funny turn at the end. Yeah, that I agree with you there. It caught me as a surprise too. I read this thing today with you all. It's probably been 15 years since I read this thing, so I didn't really remember much about it. So yeah, it kind of caught me off guard too. Like this ending seems pretty abrupt and out of nowhere. One of the reasons why that ending might have been there, King Louis gave Moliere the freedom to do what he wanted. Right, so even though everybody was trying to censor Moliere and all this stuff, King Louis kind of gave him sanction to write whatever he wanted. So probably so long as it wasn't criticizing King Louis, right? But Moliere did give him lots of artistic freedom. So yeah, that's probably one reason why the king looks so good at the end of this thing, right? Because Moliere wants to suck up a little bit, right? I could definitely kind of sense that here with just how glorified the king is at the end as being so wise and all this stuff. Kind of hard to blame Moliere, right? Some people are after your head. You want to stay with the one guy who is keeping you afloat. So King Louis didn't really care what the church said or any of that. Like so. So, like I said, so long as it didn't criticize King Louis, he was cool with it, right? Yeah, they say that was Moliere's prime. I was reading through the introduction to Moliere in her text. They said that was his main, in almost all his comedies. That was his main convention. Like he would try to epitomize everything that was wrong with society in the one single character, right? He would try to make one single character who was that horrible in almost all of his plays, just to kind of lampoon them, so to speak. So now the question is, like, what types of stuff is this play making fun of? Like, what types of things going on? And maybe in French society, maybe in Western society as a whole, the Western world. What types of things is this making fun of? Well, I think you guys have already started that, right? Religious corruption is one of them. So one of you guys tell me, like, how is religious corruption working in this play? Why is Tartuffe? How is this character of Tartuffe? How is that showcasing religious corruption?
Because he's set as like a holy man that could do no wrong, and everybody seemed like there's no way that he would do that. Like I was it Orion? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, there's no way. Why would you blame him for doing that? He would never do that. I gave him everything that he would need, so there's no way that he would do that.
Right. He was quick to flaunt that too, right? Yeah, he was quick to flaunt, oh, I'm so holy. or I don't want a lot of money, right? I'm fine living the poor life. Like he was quick to boast about such things, right? Kind of build on your comment there, Shanika.
And then after he would make a comment like that, he would burp or fart because he had just glutted himself on somebody else's food. Like, yeah. But I don't need anything. I don't want anything from you. But I'm going to eat it all. I'm going to take it all in the name of the Lord.
Right, he'll take all the charity all day long, right?
Yeah, I feel like he uses it as like pity when people's watching, but then when they're not, he really drops his act. Then you see the real him.
Yeah, like when he gets alone with a wife for the first time, right? He's very quick to drop his guard there. The second time, though, when she's trying to play him, he kind of smells it. He kind of senses that it's coming, though. Right? So he's not an idiot. He's very cunning. She rejects him so profoundly the first time, like when she comes around the second time, when it's like, oh, I just couldn't come out with it then. I had to be modest, right, for my virtue. Right. He doesn't fall for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we could raise this issue up. I'm sure all of you all probably know at least one person who claims to be a Christian or whatever, right? But lives such a life that is so hypocritical that it's not funny, right? I'm sure probably all of you all have some stories you could share about such people.
I feel like that's sorry.
Or I was going to say, am I wrong here? Right.
I feel like that's why some people doesn't come to church, because people are like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the people that's just like, oh, come as you are, we will accept you, we love you, it doesn't matter what you wear, what you look like. And then you have people who really falls for this and really feel that they, will love you no matter what. And then you have those certain people, if you or whoever comes and you dress however you feel, because it's come as you are, and they're sitting there snickering, maybe because you're not wearing a dress, or you're not wearing as cute clothes, or your shoes is not as nice. And then you're just kind of like, well, okay, y'all are not who I thought you would be as Christian people. And that turns a lot of heads. So you're just kind of like, yeah, well, if that's what Christians like, I don't think I want to be there.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, thankfully my church is really good, but I have both my arms are almost sleeved out with tattoos, and I feel like some churches I've went into kind of like looking down on that, and that's really, that's kind of crabby of them, I feel like.
That's what I had a story. Like, there was a guy, he was kind of an older biker, I guess. Well, the older generation did not accept that in church, and they're just like, you think you want to cover that up? So he left that church and he started coming to our church, which, I mean, we wear blue jeans and hoodies, and it is what it is. If you have an off day, it's just an off day. Nobody cares. We're all just kind of, it is what it is. But it was the story that he'd tell us, like how he just felt so uncomfortable because of what the older generation felt and how they seen how it used to be back in their day. And it's like, well, it's new times.
Right. Yeah, you always have the gossip mills and stuff like that going on at these churches, right? That type of thing can be very destructive and harmful to the people who are affected by it. So yeah, we all know someone who is who acts pious but isn't, right? You know, I always used to make a joke that the same people who are chilling out at Southern Exposure on Saturday nights, right? They're at church and then Cracker Barrel the next day, right? After church, right? A lot of the same crowd.
They won't eat nowhere that serves alcohol and has that kind of place, but they'll go, yeah.
Yeah. Their actions don't reflect their perceived values, just like how Tartuffe is here. I think you guys are right to point that out, right? I mean, this type of thing is harmful. I mean, it goes against the nature of the religion of the faith. Right? The faith's not about judging people based on their clothes or their tattoos or any of that. Oftentimes it happens. Yeah, we get that as a theme. We also have the marriage economy is also a big part of this story. I don't think I've talked to you guys much about the marriage economy in here, but you guys might know in the Renaissance, Middle Ages, even all the way up through like the 18th century, even in the Victorian age, right, in the 19th century, there was what was in Europe, there was what was called a marriage economy. Basically, what happened, people didn't really marry for love. I think we talked about a little bit about this with Chaucer, right? If I remember right, with the Wife of Bath. But people didn't really marry for love, right? A lot of these weddings were prearranged by fathers. Like whenever a father had a daughter back in his days, the father was just like, oh shit, right? The daughter's just going to be an economic burden on me, right? It's my job to raise her for so long, right, until I can give her away. So compare that to sons, right? Lots of times you had like the firstborn son get stuff, and the sons on down the list, if there's multiple sons, they didn't really inherit a lot. It was usually just the oldest son. The middle sons oftentimes became priests and stuff like that during this time period, just because they didn't inherit money. Like the rich fathers would use their connections and get them a nice job in a place like the church or something, right? That they didn't inherit the money, but they were still a beneficiary of money. But daughters were seen as a burden. Lots of times, fathers would attach a dowry onto his daughter, right? Attach a dowry. Maybe the dowry had property or money or something like that, right? So oftentimes men would marry women with rich fathers, right, just to try to advance in some way, right, you know, financially speaking. So that's oftentimes how marriage was. That's how marriage was perceived. And if a girl didn't get married, like by the time she was like 30, right? If a girl didn't get married by like 30, she was seen as this old maid, right? The spinster. Like this old hag, right? Who's just going to leech off her family forever, right? It was seen as a big failure if a woman didn't get married for whatever reason by the time she was like 30 back then. So like I said, not many marriages come about out of love. So in this story, like part of the laughs here is the fact this guy doesn't have anything, right? He doesn't have any money, right? You got this rich dad who's going to marry his daughter off to some guy who's has nothing, right? So that's part of the laughs here, right? On how stupid Oregon is, because he's not helping his daughter out. He's really hurting her here, right? Because he's not helping her out in any way by marrying her to someone who is of good standing.
I found that to be a big theme in this story too, is just how powerless women are, like period. Like they had no power, they had no say. Like the story started out, woman, I'm telling you, it's not to be brought up again, you know, like iron fists. Like it was, I wear the pants, my say so. Like I found that to be a big thing in here, from the wife to the daughter to the maids. Like every woman was treated, I don't want to say horrible, but they just, it wasn't good.
Yeah, the only woman character in the play who really stands up for herself, the maid.
Yeah.
She's quick to point out things.
Yeah, and I like that. She was real feisty, but it didn't help her any. Nobody's to listen.
No, you're just the maid. What do you know, right?
Yeah.
That was
But
kind
yeah,
of
women were treated pretty bad. They were like it goes along with what you were talking about. That's why it hit me. Their property, like the man owns them, just like that. Like you said, the daughter was property that he could, you know, it wasn't only a financial burden, so he looked for some way to make money off of it in some way.
right. It was a pretty messed up system, right? To say the least. Yeah, be glad that you all don't live in the 18th century France or 17th century France, right? Or England for that matter.
They would have done hung me out, shot me, murdered me somewhere. They'd be like, nope, she's too mouthy. She's got to go.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, oh Lord, I wouldn't make it.
I would have either done really good or really bad.
Probably. I would have been a witch, probably. I'd have been burning somewhere.
They would have had you burning at the stake in Salem. Yeah, this whole thing is going to be a big conflict over our readings for the next couple of weeks, because next week when we read Madame Bovary, you guys will find out that's part of the conflict in the book. You know, our heroine in the book, Emma, she is forced into this marriage that she doesn't want, right? Just because of the way things were back then. She doesn't want this marriage necessarily. So there was always a big fear that oftentimes these young girls would get married off to old dudes too. Like Tartuffe in the play is kind of seen as like being older and overweight, and right, he's not the definition of, you know, a guy of a desirable guy here, right? So oftentimes these young girls will get married off to these old men, right? Which was kind of like 20 or 30 years older. So some people, even now, that might be their thing, right? But back then, that was very normal. Because these older guys would marry, you know, to have kids or heirs or whatever, right? there was always they have some jokes about that in this play, but there was always a big fear of because these girls would often marry these old guys. Now, if we look on let's take a look at page 153. You'll see this demonstrated here. And on 153, Act 2, Scene 2, Doreen is giving this big speech. Of course, Doreen, as we know, is she's the maid. She's the mouthy maid in the play. So if you look on, I'll start the passage out sort of in the middle. If you look at about the middle of her speech at the bottom of page 152, she says, "Is that a holy mission? You seem upset. Is it something I said? I'll shut up. We'll talk of her instead. Look at this girl, your daughter, your own blood. How will her honor fare covered with mud? Think of his age. So from the night they're wed, bliss, if there is any, leaves the marriage bed. And she'll be tied unto this elderly person. Her dedication, the fidelity will worsen, and soon he will sprout horns, your holy man, and no one will be happy. If I can have another word, I'd like to say old men and young girls are married every day, and the young girls stray, but who's to blame for the loss of honor and good name? The father, who proceeds to pick a mate blindly, though it's someone she may hate, bears the sins the daughter may commit, imperiling his soul because of it. If you do this, I vow you'll hear the bell as you die, summoning you to hell." Right? So that's a pretty explicit passage there, right? They had back then. You see all these references to like men growing horns on their head, right? Cuckolding, right? Men who were cheated on grew horns, right? And that they were made fun of, right? They were called cuckolds. So of course, you guys probably know now, right? Some people even have a fetish about that type of thing now, right? Some men like to watch their wives cheat on them and stuff, right? That's what that's named after, is cuckolding, right? Growing a horn, men who would grow horns because the wives would cheat. Well, they say here that the fact that cheating even happens, right? It's the dad's fault for marrying them off to these old dudes, right? Who don't have it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, if you marry somebody she doesn't love, right? Of course, that's going to happen. So this whole thing is kind of being lampooned here a little bit too, right? I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on this subject, the marriage economy, and like the whole thing about cheating and stuff like that here? Because, like I said, this kind of stuff's going to keep coming up over the next couple of weeks.
I think it's funny how, like, back in the day, how women or girls would be like, no way, he's old, or I'm not in love with him. But nowadays it's, yes, he's old, he has money, he can take care of me. No matter the age is just a number, is now new terms. But it's funny how, like, the roles, I guess, turn.
Right back, I think you're right, Shanika.
And even now you're starting to see older women with younger men. And, it's like anything else. People are like, oh my God, what is she doing with him? And blah, blah, blah. But it's more common than we think. I have a friend, and like I say, I'm almost 50, and she married a boy her son's age. they have 2 kids together. So, and me, I no.
And a lot has to do like maturity levels also. Like a lot of, because I know a lot of girls that I graduate with, a lot of them are now married to older men, 40s, 50s. And I'm 30 something, younger 30s. But it's because they were mentally abused by these younger boys who did not know how to treat these girls like women or princesses. And they chose, well, I'll just go older. And I guess a lot of boys around Logan are just immature. You want the big trucks, loud trucks, run around, sleep with everything coming and going just because it's pretty. So I guess that's what it is now. Maybe girls are just tired of being mistreated by this younger generation and wants to try something new and old. I don't know. I'll stick with mine though. We're the same age, but I'll stick with mine. Oh, and isn't there like a saying like your first marriage is love and then your second's money? I just thought I'd add that. I thought it was funny.
Oh, it's heard too, like maybe for some girls it's because they have daddy issues or something. People would always say that.
Right. Going back to like Freudian psychology there, right? Of course, they want a man who's old enough to be their dad, right? If they were abandoned or something like that, right?
And two, it makes you wonder, do these younger girls choose these older men because they are easier to cheat on? Because if they go out and they sleep around on them, well, they're going to convince them, well, I'm the best you're ever going to do. I'm 20 years younger than you and blah, 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 blah. And so then he's like, okay, well, just don't do it again. And she's like, okay, I won't until the next time. And I have saw that like in ladies that I work with. I had a lady, she was 24, her boyfriend was in his 50s, and she was pregnant by a guy in his 20s. But you know what? The 50-year-old was still sending money and everything else to her.
All right. Sad situation all around. That sounds like.
I've also seen the older guys cheat on the younger girls, especially ones that have money, because they know they're going to stay around.
It's almost like a business arrangement.
Yeah, they'll stay around for the money or for the house or for the kids or what have
Yeah, for
you.
that lifestyle. They don't want to let go of that lifestyle.
Yeah, if anything, this type of thing was more rigid over in France than it was even in England. The French were very conservative about this, at least. Like I said, some of them even like would throw their wives out of their men, right? Like Ben Franklin, for instance. So the French love this kind of thing.
And I think it's even more common now. People are starting to embrace their sexuality, and they don't think of things as being any certain way. My daughter, her children played t-ball, they played football, and a woman that her children were also playing, she came point blank and she asked my daughter, would her and her husband like to swap? And my daughter's like, no. And she says, well, it never hurts to ask. Somebody may actually be interested in it. So I think people are starting to be more open, and they don't care what people think.
Right. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that, Sherry. I think people today are more open about these things. But the French have always been open about it, but maybe Americans are becoming more so.
I think social media helped that a lot. Everything's okay. But man, my goodness, can some things just be private?
I agree with you. There's some things we should not talk about out in public.
Like I said, the French, they're open about it. You gotta hand them that compared to the Brits and the Americans for the most part.
Isn't it like the French people who don't shave like their underarms and stuff? Is that them? Like their feminist type things believe that, you know, women have they can just go all out, hairy everywhere, just kind of thing. No need to shave because that's
Yeah,
You
they can be with armpits or private
yeah.
parts and things like that, right? They're a little bit more free with that kind of thing. Now, of course, you guys all know too, the French language is the language of love and poetry, right? So, you know, they're all about that kind of thing too, even more so than the rest of the Western world. France is the fun place to be, right? Unlike everywhere else. But even just the fact that all this stuff is talked about so explicitly in this play, I mean, that's even an innovation for the time period. Stuff was alluded to in Shakespeare, like they would make dirty jokes in Shakespeare and stuff. Nothing quite as raunch as this, so to speak.
You know, I've been watching TikTok. My daughter got me into watching TikTok. And some of these country music singers, they snuck stuff right in there on us. I heard the other day, like the Alan Jackson song, where he talks about taking her for a burger and a grape snow cone. Well, apparently it's supposed to be inducive of oral sex. The hamburger was her and the grape snow cone was him. So I was like, what? I'm too old for this.
I don't know this song. I'm gonna have to look it up now. So.
Chattahoochee, maybe. Is that it?
Is it that song? Oh yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Harder than the hoochie coochie.
Oh my God, my son sings that song, and I was like, you cannot sing that part. Quit singing that part. And he's just like, why? It's okay. You can say that. So no, you can't. You can't keep saying that. Like, you don't even know what it is when you stop. And my husband's like, why? I was like, you know why. Just quit.
So now you know what it means when he says he settled for a burger and a grape snow cone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't feel bad. My little boy sings, girl, you got that yummy yum. And he's 5.
That's funny.
Mr. Yeager, I hate to run, but I've got to clock out, and I will be, by the time I get home, class will be over.
Yeah, we probably won't hang around too much longer anyway, Sherry. So
Okay. Well, y'all have a good weekend and have a good night.
I think write down you were here before I forget.
Thank you.
All right, gotcha, Sherry. Yeah, I mean, just like I said, all this stuff it's interesting to talk about. You would never really a student in high school today would never read anything like Tartuffe, right? That's because even in like high school English, things are censored and things like that, where these types of subjects are never talked about. I think that would be, I've always thought they would be better served talking about more of that stuff, because it's not like they're not doing it in high school anyway, right? So that's just me. That's why I don't teach high school.
When I was reading this and I was there, like, I knew the church was big at this time. Like you said, it had lightened up, but like I said, I was expecting this guy's head to be on a platter at the end of it. I wasn't expecting it to be, you know, cute and funny, but I was thinking like, this is some risky stuff for that time when I was reading it. Like, wouldn't you have been, I don't know, at least tarred and feathered or something for coming on to somebody else's wife in their home? Like, if you got caught at it, like people didn't act like we do today. Like, they didn't act like that then. They could be killed or like shunned or put out of their,
Excommunicated, right?
communicated. Yeah, like that bad stuff.
Didn't they all
At the time, they just put it
on
on
the stock?
What'd you say? What was that, you who said that, Lauren?
I said, didn't they used to put people in them stocks too and throw tomatoes at them?
Yeah, back in the Middle Ages, they would, right? They put them in the stock where they couldn't move, the public ridicule, things like that. Of course, you guys might all know the story of the Scarlet Letter from American Lit, right? But Hester and a Scarlet Letter cheated on Dimsdale, or no, she cheated on Chillingworth with Dimsdale, right? But she's put on public display at the beginning of the book, has to carry around the letter A on her all the time, right? To show that she's an adulteress. So the Puritans definitely didn't mess around with that type of stuff.
And weren't they the witch trial people? Like,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said before, when we talked about Milton, like a lot of these like religious radicals who were so extreme about that stuff, they were the people who came to the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Yeah.
So they were too radical conservative even for the mainstream in England. So these are the people who moved to America. So,
and that's what this guy comes off as at the beginning of the story. You're like, oh goodness, you know, he's gonna start preaching here in a minute. And he does, I guess he does that so in some points of the story, and then he shows his true colors. Like, I think he might be the snake in that's walking standing up.
yeah, in Act 3, Scene 2, I highlighted this passage, but he's just talking to the maid, and the maid's evidently showing some cleavage or something, right? He says, "Cover your bust. The flesh is weak. Souls are forever damaged by such sights when sinful thoughts begin their evil flight." So just to echo what you just said there, right? Yeah, he's pretending to be almost be a Puritan here. I can't see this cleavage, right? It might make me think sinful thoughts. All right. Cover that up.
What is a hair shirt?
I'm not sure where are you looking at here?
I can't. He tells the maid to take his hat, his hair shirt or something, and it's in parentheses. And I wasn't for sure what that means, but I'll find it. Hold on.
It's in the same passage that you just read.
Or the handkerchief? Is that what you're talking about? Tartuffe pulls the handkerchief out.
No,
No,
Oh. Okay. I just saw it. It's exactly like it says in the footnote. A lot of Catholics at this time, to pay penance for their sins, they would literally like flog themselves with like sharp objects and stuff. So they would like whip themselves with like the sharp. If you guys have ever seen the Da Vinci Code, right? There's a character in that movie that does that, right? Flogs
it's made
himself.
out of like hair or something, isn't it? Like a shoot. It's leather, and I think they take and braid like some type of hair. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what. So he's like, oh, I guess I'm gonna go do that now. I guess I'm gonna go beat myself with this whip, this hair whip thing, right? I want to go do that.
Mutilating himself like for as in Christ, like Christ did for the pain and the blood, and then him coming on to the master's wife. Like, this guy, he better watch. Lightning's probably gonna strike him.
Then he has to fan himself, right? Because he's like, ooh, I saw some cleavage. Ooh. Right. So he hams it up very funnily here, right? Yeah, then in Act 3, Scene 3, that's when he's trying to seduce Elmire. And he has some classic lines, like in line 60. It says, the love that to eternal beauty binds us doesn't stint when temporal beauty finds us. Our senses can as easily be charmed when by an earthly work we are disarmed. You are a true beauty without a flaw, and in your presence I'm aroused with awe. But for the author of all nature, so my heart has ardent feelings, even though I feared them at first, questioning their source. Had I been ambushed by some evil force, I felt that I must hide from this temptation. You, my feelings threatened my salvation. Yes, I found this sinful and distressing until I saw your beauty as a blessing. So now my passion never can be wrong, and thus my virtue stays intact and strong. This is how I'm here in supplication, offering my heart in celebration of the audacious truth that I love you, and only you can make this wish come true, that through your grace my offerings received and accepted, and that I have achieved salvation of a sort, and by your grace I could be content in this low place. So he's even kind of like trying to sweet talk through his hypocrisy here, right? Oh, only a woman as hot as you, right, can make me think such thoughts, right? That's pretty much what he's saying there, right? You know, only you could make me sin, right? That's pretty much what he's saying there. Just trying to sweet talk her. He doesn't know how bad he looks, right? He's trying to justify his hypocrisy there.
I feel like he's also saying, and the Lord sent me here to you and put you in front of me, like it's meant to be. They're not doing anything wrong because it was preordained.
Right. God sent me to this house, right? For a reason. Yeah, he's quite a character. This, like I said, this is definitely a comic play, but this is the type of comedy with a satire, right? It has a harsh bit of truth to it as well. So, like I said, we all know people like this. It's a little bit of a different style of comedy, you know, what we got with Lysistrata earlier in the semester, right? It's a little bit more pointed, a little sharper in critiquing this type of thing. Lysistrata was fun just for fun's sake, right? This is definitely more sharp and pointed. But yeah, I think we pretty much hit most of what we needed to talk about with this play. You know, those were definitely the major themes: religious corruption, marriage economy, things like that. I should mention too, one of Moliere's traits that he has in all his plays too is most of these plays he does have a servant character, kind of like the woman here, who is all knowing and stuff like that. So this is almost this, there's a class element here too, right? The lower classes know a little bit more than the upper classes about things like common sense. So that's a big part of his plays too, that the lower class people are more self-aware than the upper class people. It's always the upper class people who look like idiots. So that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in France too. The fact that the aristocracy class was looked at as being so stupid and ignorant about stuff, whereas the poor people were the smart ones. I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up too. All right, what do you guys think of that? Do you think that's funny? The lower class character is the one who knows what's going on, knows what's up. We'll say it like it is.
Yeah, Dorian or whatever her name was, the maid, was my favorite character. Like I said, she was feisty and she was quick to point out, and like that's rare too, you know. Usually the help know stay in their place, and I was like, look at her, you go girl.
Right, she tells the master of the house that he's an idiot. His daughter is going to cheat on her future husband and all this stuff. And she doesn't hold back any. Well, let me take a tally here as far as who's here. And we'll let you guys go a little early tonight. Erica, Jesse, Lauren, Shanika, and Timmy. All right, guys. Yeah, we'll call it there. Like I said, next week's class we're going to talk about part 1 of Madame Bovary. So we'll see you all then.
And the post is on what? The first week?
It's on the Romantic poets.
Romantic poets. Okay, yeah, I wrote that down. All right.
I want to get those questions up tonight, so they'll be there. Okay. So.
Okay.
See you guys next week. You guys have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Only get
Yep,
one.
have a good weekend.
You too.